which allows me to record while I am walking, record my screen on my phone while I'm walking. It's awesome. It's called Screencast-O-Matic. And this is from my man Tony Heller over at Real Climate Science. And I just want to read this to you because this is part and parcel of the fakery that we have, the insane lack of real journalistic practices, and it's just a stupidity. There's no other way around that. All right, so this is Dateline, September 26, 2019. Catastrophically bad journalism at the Sydney Morning Herald. The Sydney Morning Herald says sea level is going to rise to catastrophic levels due to melting of sea ice glaciers. Oh no! And here's her headline: hotter oceans, wilder weather, less ice. The IPCC upgrades projections to catastrophic. And here goes the IPCC. A new IPCC report says inaction on climate change will likely result in a sea level rise of 1.1 meters by 2100, up from the 2013 projection to more than 90 centimeters. Without action, the seas will be 5 meters higher by 2300. Oh my goodness. However, if you read down a couple of paragraphs, even if political action can cap global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, the report warns that warming oceans and melting sea ice glaciers will raise sea levels by 30 to 60 centimeters by 2100. So which is it, man? Is it 2100? Is it 60 centimeters, or is it what they say? How many? Hold on a second. Gotta get that back. Oops. I guess I can go back here. Here we go. Or what they say here? Likely rise sea level by 1.1 meters. All right. Silly. So let's just keep reading this. Really. So hotter. We talk about that. So if there's no such thing as a sea ice glacier, and if there was, it wouldn't add to sea level, as Archimedes determined thousands of years ago. There has been almost no sea level rise outside the offices of the Sydney Morning Herald over the past 120 years. They should probably look outside the window, and he gives us a chart there of the Sydney meters of sea levels. You got 6.9, what's that, 6.93 or something like that, in 1890, and it's risen all the way up to 7.02. So it's risen a couple centimeters, which is pretty par for the course worldwide. In fact, Tony takes this picture right here. Let's just read it. He says he took this This is a picture from a long time ago. I think it was 1920, 1900, something like that, of that building structure right there. And he looks at the same exact thing from the other side right here. And it's definitely not risen at all there. You can see that right there, that the sea levels have not risen according to that picture. So there you go. On top of that, the study that we have here that shows you there has been essentially just a couple centimeters over the last 150 years or so. But that's Sydney, all right? No long-term gauge shows any indication of any acceleration. If there was, it'd be visible as an upwards curvature in every tide gauge. And here's the Battery in New York. It looks like an upward tide gauge. So we see monthly mean sea level with average seasonal remove. So basically there's an average going up. So in the Battery, we see it has gone up from, that's over by where the World Trade Center used to be. We got 0 right there. So it's gone from 0.45 meters to right about a little bit more than a meter or so. All right, but then we look at Alameda, California. That's Oakland, Alameda, California. And we see a little bit of a sea rise. It was at 0.15 meters. And it gone all the way up to, a little bit more than 0. Okay, again, we're talking centimeters. Here's Stockholm, Sweden. We actually see it going down. And so Stockholm, Sweden went from 7.35 down to, wow, what is that? 6.75. So essentially Stockholm, and that's from the NOAA tides and currents, sea level trends. And that isn't from, so we see the Battery going up in New York City, then we see Stockholm going down, Alameda County in California staying pretty flat. Sydney staying pretty flat, a couple of centimeters, not that big of a deal. Certainly not enough to panic about. The graph below plots the IPCC projections on top of reality. Any snake oil salesman can make a projection. Actual scientists, though, cross-check to see if it makes sense. And here we got The IPC projection, look at that, way going like that, and then we got the trend. So the IPC projection relative to the trend, if you look at the trend, it just stays pretty flat. It goes about a couple centimeters a century. But the IPC, and of course, if you look at the IPC record, if they're an investor, you'd never invest with them. All right. 30 years ago, the Canberra Times predicted the Maldives would be underwater by now. This is 1988, September. Threat to the islands. A gradual rise in average sea level is threatening to completely cover this Indian Ocean nation of 1,196 small islands within the next 30 years, according to authorities. But the end of the Maldives and its 200,000 people could happen sooner if drinking water supplies dry up by 1992 as predicted. And that was in 1988, and this is what it looks like today. This is some island resort live cam. Looks like people are still there. And here's another live cam. Yeah, it looks pretty fantastic to me. I could handle that. No matter how many times climate alarmists fail, they come back with more of the same idiocy. Rising sea levels could make thousands of islands from the Maldives to Hawaii uninhabitable within decades, says the Independent. Most low-lying atoll islands are likely to become uninhabitable by the middle of this century, according to a new study. And we never heard that before. However, 200 years ago, some of the Maldives islands actually were disappearing. He has an account of this in some paper from the Hobart Town Courier, 1837, is entirely gone. So some island, some Fady Foal Atoll is entirely gone. Some islands have disappeared entirely. But hey, what do they know? They didn't have Michael Mann leading the charge on climate change. Barack Obama fear-mongered about sea level rise his entire presidency and just purchased a $15 million home at sea level in Massachusetts. Apparently, climate fear propaganda pays well. Look at that. That's it right there. They pay cash. Because certainly no bank would give them a 30-year mortgage if we're all going to be underwater, right? Anyway, so there you go. Then you can look at other stuff on this. Climate cycles correspond closely with sunspot cycles. I get this a lot about the sunspots, the solar minimum. I don't know all that much about it. I do know sunspots are a big deal. My man Howard Hayden over at the Energy Advocate talks about that a lot. So anyway, good stuff. I love this stuff. It's just fun to read the reality of what was predicted years ago and recognize these same fraudsters are still making the same predictions. Just a new crop of kids. That's all they're doing. Same regurgitation. New crop of kids hearing it, and then you got greedy people who are trying to exploit it. No other way around that. All right, we'll see you.